Aye. Okay, well, those minutes are approved. Sarah, everyone is up to date on taxes?
Yes.
Okay. All right, the first item up then is 2016-18 Philip and Suzanne Maley, 8 Ardsley Terrace. Just make sure you take the microphone.
Mr. Feinsteiner is not here yet. I'd like to make just a very brief statement.
Can you hold on 1 second, Mr. Maley? You need to have the microphone.
For transcript.
What's
Just for our
that?
transcript.
Okay.
And then before you speak,
I'm Philip Maley. When I bought the house in 1977, 39 years ago, there was a deck on the house which actually extended onto Columbia University's property by a couple feet. In those days, nobody cared about decks. But I decided to bring this proceeding, but before I did, I wrote a long letter to Columbia University and sent them copies of surveys and everything else. And a fellow from Columbia came by, told me they had sent all the paperwork down to the city. And the city office legal department had no problem with anything. And he had no problem with anything. So on that basis, the Columbia was okay with everything I wanted to do. I brought this proceeding. And I think the proceeding is self-explanatory, but I would also say that all of my neighbors, including Columbia, have received the required certified mail notice. I even sent a copy of the whole application to Columbia, and nobody has objected or even come by to see what I'm doing. So I think my neighbors don't have any problem with what I want to do, which is actually to make the existing deck smaller and all on my property. And I would also point out that Ardsley Terrace is a street that was built before zoning. So all the houses are on postage stamp lots. And some people have said that Ardsley Terrace was the cause of a lot of zoning in Irvington and elsewhere. So I urge you to grant the site plan development approval subject to the zoning board grant of a variance. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions?
No, I think your architect is here.
Brad is going to.
Brad is here.
Okay. So if you don't mind taking the microphone, then introduce yourself and then you can make the presentation. Oh, by the way, Brenda Livingston has recused herself on this item.
I'm Bradley Olson from Gotham Design. Phil came to us and just asked him to draw what he was planning to do. As he explained, he bought the house in 1977. There was an existing deck that extended onto the Columbia property by approximately 2 feet, 2 inches. What he'd like to do is simply reduce the size of the deck so that the deck is entirely within the confines of his own property. So the concept is simply to remove 3 feet of the deck, make the deck 3 feet smaller in the same location, so that instead of having effectively a negative side yard, he would have at least a small side yard and the entire deck would be within his property. So as he explained, he's been in touch with Columbia and they are comfortable with what he's doing. It's obviously lessening the existing nonconformity significantly by containing it on his property. It does have, his lot is a pre-existing nonconformity. It's in the 1F20 zone. He has a lot area of only 10,785 square feet. So in addition to the shortage in the side yard, he's also, even though we're reducing the size, we're still over in lot coverage. But again, this just simply trying to reduce the size of the deck to make sure that it's entirely on his property, and but keep the deck effectively where it is, just making it a little bit smaller.
Okay. Any comments from any of the board members? Anyone in the audience wish to speak on this matter? No? Okay, well then you've received. Oh yes, I'm sorry, MJ.
Hi, MJ Wilson, representing the ECB. We did not notice any trees indicated on the plans, and we would just like to make sure that if there are trees, they're indicated, and if there are not any trees to be impacted, that it states so.
Thank you. Okay. And I think
Yeah.
we had a comment from Lucille Munns, the landscape architect, consulting landscape architect of the planning board, and she noted also that this is an application for site plan approval for the repair modification to an existing deck, and it appears that no trees would be impacted, nor would landscaping be required, but Ms. Wilson said that you could show, just confirm that.
That, yeah, we can put a note on the drawings stating that no trees are going to be affected by the work. Again, the deck is going to be in the same place, just smaller, so there's no tree removal.
Doug, did you have any other comments other than the two variances that are needed?
No,
I
just a
think we're all
couple
good.
minor ones.
Okay. But I think,
Did you get the memo earlier? Do they know
Did you get
about
my
their
memo?
documented copy?
Yeah, we got it set there.
Just remember, the deadline is Monday for the August meeting. If you miss it, it's September
for the ZBA.
for the ZBA.
So I think you'll have to come back, we don't have a resolution ready this evening, you come back with the note on the plan, and having gone to the ZBA, and we'll have a resolution ready for you for the next planning board meeting, which will be, I think it's August 2nd. Okay? All right, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Excuse me, can I ask? I didn't hear very well. Should I be going to the ZBA now?
Yes. Yes, and go to the ZBA and then come back with the one change that we asked for, and having had the ZBA approve the variance, and then there'll be a resolution ready at the next meeting for the planning board approval. Okay?
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Okay, the next item up is 2016-14, St. Barnabas Church, 15 North Broadway.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Lino Shred on behalf of St. Barnabas. Here tonight, hopefully, with approval of the site plan. This is for our parking lot expansion. I understand we received a clean bill of health from the village engineer and also Ms. Munns, so I'm hoping tonight we have a resolution hopefully approving the application.
Okay. Any comments from any of the board members? At this point, anyone from in the audience wish to speak on this matter? No, I think we do have a resolution for this. Right, Lucille met with Steve Lopez, and
Right.
everything is fine with the landscaping.
Yeah, I'll go through the resolution. In April 2016, St. Barnabas applied for site plan approval for expansion of its parking lot along with drainage modifications, tree removal, installation of walkways and landscaping at the church's property at 15 North Broadway, which is located in the village's view preservation district. The new construction would increase the existing nonconformity in lot coverage and would entail activity in the Broadway buffer, therefore requiring variances from the zoning board. On May 24th, the CPA granted variances for coverage and activity in the Broadway buffer. Mahana Engineering reviewed the plans, and in the memoranda dated April 1st to June 1st listed a number of issues with the site plan which were addressed in subsequent submissions which town found satisfactory. Lucille Munns reviews the site plan and landscape plan, and in a staff report dated May 31st stated her approval of the landscape plan. The planning board held a public hearing on April 6th and tonight. The planning board determined that the proposed improvements would not impact the view of the Hudson, and whereas the action is an unlisted action under SECRET and would have no negative environmental impacts, now therefore be it resolved the planning board issue a negative declaration under SECRET. This is not a one-family house, so it's not exempt. And resolved, the planning board grants the application for site plan approval of the improvements reflected in the drawings.
Okay. Any comments on the resolution? No, can I have a motion to approve? Second?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Wait, you're signing it and then you get your copy.
I think those are both the signs we take on the other board, Mary Ann. Thank you.
See you outside.
Next item is 2016-11, Lisa Trencher, 6 Riverview Place.
Good evening, I'm Mitchell Koch, I'm the architect of record for this project. This is Lisa Trencher herself. I'm tendering to you our May 27th approval from the ZBA. My own cover letter that I sent with the package, and lastly, the July 6th letter from Han Engineering saying that they thought the project was good. So,
Okay,
for your record.
thank you. Any comments from any of the board members?
All the retaining walls, they're existing, right? And there's one you got labeled, is that off the property that you got labeled there? No, up there, no, up there,
Please speak to Mark Small.
upper left. It appears,
That's not a retaining wall, that's actually the name of the property owner on the other side there.
and that's not yours,
No.
even though it's on your paper.
That's off the property.
That's what it looked like. Okay.
Okay, Mary Ann, we have a resolution on this item?
In April 2016, Lisa Trencher applied for site plan approval to replace an existing window with a door and a 3-by-5-foot landing at her property at 6 Riverview Terrace, which is located in the 1F10 zoning district. The existing lot coverage exceeded what's permitted in the 1F10 zoning district, and the additional 15 feet of coverage would require an area variance. In reviewing the application, it was learned that there was an additional 639 square feet of undocumented coverage on the property consisting of retaining walls, patios, and mechanical equipment, which required a further variance. On May 24th, the zoning board of appeals granted the applicant a variance for coverage to permit the landing and to legalize the retaining walls and patios, which were reduced in size at the request of the ZBA. Whereas not reviewed the plans and in a memorandum dated April 5th, listed a number of issues with the site plan which were addressed in the subsequent submission, which I found satisfactory. Planning board held a public hearing on April 6th. Type 2 action under secret. Resolved that the planning board grants the application for site plan approval with the improvements reflected in the advice by Mr. Koch.
Any comments on the resolution? No? Can I have a motion to approve? A second? Second. All in favor? Aye. Thank you.
You have to go to
Next item is 2016-13, David Rosner, 51 Jaffrey Court. Good evening, just state your name.
David Getz from Lehman and Getz Engineering.
If you want to give us a brief presentation on what you're proposing.
Sure. We're representing Mr. David Rosner, who proposes to build a patio behind his home located at 51 Jaffrey Court. We've received comments from the engineering consultant, primarily related to utilities, especially drainage. There's an existing dry well below ground in the driveway area, and the proposed coverage of impervious coverage on the property exceeds the zoning requirement. So we're proposing a second dry well to mitigate the potential stormwater impacts from that. We received today some the latest engineering comments, and actually in response to those, modified the plan slightly to shift the new dry well, instead of being near the house, to more out in the front lawn area. This satisfied the concern about distance from the structure and distance from the existing dry well. So
Does it show on the plans, or is there some record of what that dry well is picking up?
yes, Andrew, do you have? Sure. Andrew Gregorczewski is the builder and has researched information from the town, from the village. We also have added to the plan showing two pipes that would parallel the sides of the homes with a note that basically says the pipes need to be there to bring roof runoff to the system. If they're not there, if they're not functioning, put them in. No one is exactly sure of all the existing connection locations.
Well, we put the holes, the two,
Andrew, you need a microphone.
introduce yourself.
And introduce yourself.
Hi, Andrew Grzegorzewski.
Can you spell that?
Yes, I can.
For the,
Grzegorzwski. 13
Thank you.
letters to check. We put the hose and run the hose because the leaders go directly to the ground. So we disconnected them, we put the hose, and the water was not coming anywhere on the surface. So we assume that they go to the driveway below the driveway.
any questions from any of the board members?
What's the patio made out of?
Hi, I'm David Rosner. This is the house. This is bluestone, and it's separated by, what is that? What is this stuff called?
The gravel.
So it's gravel and
Gravel.
bluestone. So it's bluestone strips that are like 4 feet long. This is an existing patio, actually, when I bought the house. This was here, and we're trying to legalize this and just expand it out to here, but it's all bluestone with gravel.
And it's in the setback for the aqueduct.
That's correct.
Where do these existing paths go? There's one down here in the lower left-hand corner. No, left-hand corner. Lower left-hand corner. Just to the right of that. Where does that go? Just ends there?
Yeah, it just ends, and then there's existing vegetation here. There's
And there's the path along the top that goes to nowhere now, but it will go.
There's a
That's
path
existing?
Yeah, that's existing. There's a path that has been existing on the property, I think, since it was built in 2008 or so. So there's a path here that runs to the existing, I guess you would call this the little patio that's there right now, and then this is the extension of it. And again, it's bluestone strips with gravel. So it's actually, I don't know what the total amount is that's covered by the bluestone, but the gravel is to make it so that the water seeps in. Yeah.
The same with the other one on the lower left?
Here?
Yeah.
That's not even bluestone. I don't even know what is.
Nothing there.
There's nothing there really.
That was on the survey.
Yeah,
Path.
just a path.
No coverage.
No coverage at all.
What's in the backyard now? Is it grass or is it gravel?
It's grass right now. Like this is all right now. This is here. This is a patio that's there with the bluestone that's shown right here. That was existing when I bought the house, and then this would be the new part of the patio. And right now it's just grass. But I put the grass in. Actually, there were like these two cutouts that were there on the property that were just filled with something.
Right. That's what I remember.
Yeah,
Remember it
and
being
I
grass.
picked that up and I put grass down temporarily, hoping that the planning board will approve the extension of the patio and that eventually we would get the patio.
Well, what was there, was it an impervious surface or pervious surface?
It was impervious, right?
What it was, there was two large cutouts with the gravel inside.
Okay.
But this patio here was installed on the concrete, and now is actually installed on the gravel.
And you got a new, I'm sorry, go
No,
ahead.
so it was pervious, it was a pervious cutout.
Gravel area.
All right.
And you got a new wall? Is that a new wall at the edge of the patio parallel to the aqueduct?
Here, I'm talking about.
Correct?
Yeah, this is.
It's a bench. It's not a wall. It's a bench on the footings.
There's a door, is that an existing door to the aqueduct?
That's existing. All of that is existing, yes.
The door is existing?
That's correct.
I mean, my comment is that you're asking for quite a bit of coverage over what's permitted, like 47.5% over the permitted coverage. You have to go to the ZBA for that. Is there some reason that you have to go that far over the coverage, that the patio has to be that large? You're not reducing it down?
But I'd just like to make one point that the existing conditions are considerably above the coverage, so that it's not as if it's a conforming amount now and we're proposing more.
Understood, but you're still considerably adding more to the impervious surface.
I think when they built the house, they got whatever variances they needed, and I know that it's a lot bigger than what the original coverage was allowed. I thought it was like 39% over. Does that sound about right? Something like that.
Well,
And
yeah,
then-
it's almost 40%
Right,
greater
and
than.
then, and so this is there, or was there when I bought the house, it still is there, and then this piece is basically to put a picnic table on. I mean, it's pretty, the property's really small, actually. So it's just, this has like a 6-seat table, and this has a grill, and that's it.
Due to the small size of the property.
You need to speak into the microphone.
Due to the small size of the property, the percentages calculate to be high, but the actual square footage values are not as significant, obviously, if it was a bigger site.
Understood, but overall, I mean, the purpose for the coverage factor is that the village is trying to limit the amount of impervious surface, right? Trying to reduce the amount of stormwater runoff in the village.
Well, I'll point out again that
And taking away of green space. So just you're aware, I mean, you're going to have to go to the ZBA for this and come back to us. So at this point, I'll open up any questions from anybody in the audience on this item. Yes, sir.
Could I just ask where
Could
the
you please come up, take the microphone, and state your name, please.
Frank Campbell, I'm on Station Road. Where is the aqueduct in relation to the house?
more on the back edge.
Okay, and the drainage thing that you're putting in there, is there any piping that might affect neighboring houses? I'm south of you, down the hill from Jeffrey, on Station Road.
The new
Take the microphone.
The new dry well will tie into the existing, which has an existing overflow. So my answer to you would be no, that this would not impact your property.
And the piping from here, does it go south?
No.
No?
You have to give him the microphone.
Sorry, if the piping goes south from there, it would be heading towards my property, and I just want to anticipate whether there'll be, oh, Mr. Campbell, we have to adjust something on your property or something like that. I just, I'm not too familiar with all this technology.
Okay, well, I would say that the volume of what we're proposing, plus what's existing in terms of the dry well and the stone around it, is sufficient to capture a lot more water than what leaves the site now. So in terms of impacts from stormwater runoff, we feel that we'll definitely be reducing those.
We're still reviewing it too. I mean, we're not.
Right, you
Still
gotta-
haven't looked at everything.
Okay.
We don't know exactly what's getting to the dry wells right now. We need to see where the outlet goes, the overflow, it does tie in.
So there'll be more time to explore those.
Yeah.
Yes, they're going to have to go to the zoning board of appeals for the coverage, and then come back to us if the ZBA approves it, and then they'll still be subject to site plan approval from us. Okay, any other comments from anyone in the audience? Any comments from any of the board members?
Oh, I just had a question.
Yes.
Who are you?
The village consultant engineer.
You're Han? Okay, so did you just say that we got another letter from you today, and we got one, I guess, on the day of the last planning board meeting, so it's kind of hard to respond to the letters that we get on the day of the meeting, but did you just say that there's more information that you need?
It's in the letter.
Oh, the stuff that we got today is what you need to find out? I thought we responded to that by sending in a letter today.
We did, but that was just this afternoon, I guess.
So you haven't had a chance to take a
I
look?
wasn't in the office after 11, so I wouldn't see.
Okay, but that is what we responded to today? Okay, so then you'll review that?
No, you'll have to make a new submission for the next meeting. Okay. It's physically impossible to review everyone's revisions. It takes almost a week to.
Yeah, I just wanted to understand that you didn't see what we sent in today?
No. No, but I'll look at it when I get back, and I'll call Dave, and, we can
Great.
work it out before the next meeting.
Okay, great.
You still have to submit for the next meeting for the rest of the board to see it?
Yep.
Okay. Now, the deadline for the ZBA is Monday for the August meeting. If you miss Monday's meeting, you have to wait till the end of September. So you want to work pretty hard there.
Does mailings need to go out by Monday?
No.
Friday.
Friday. Next Friday.
Okay.
Pat, there were,
Yes.
did you see Melissa's comments? I can. I made a copy.
Oh, okay, you have a copy from, okay. I don't need to read it to you. You can just
This
take
is
those
from the
comments
village
regarding
Landscape engineer, landscape
landscape architect.
consultant. You have to deal with them now, but
Right, when you come back.
Okay, it's
After
asking,
CBA.
asking for additional
Yes.
information on size, species of plants.
Okay?
Okay.
That's it. See you the next month or two.
here.
Don't walk out.
All right, the next item on the agenda is, what is it, 17 Matheson Park? Jacqueline Leonardo and Andrew Sorolnik.
I'm John Malone, Ferguson Malone Architects, representing Jacqueline and Andres Cyrilnik. The project is for a addition to an existing house in Matheson Park, a two-story addition to the rear, and also some additions of patios and the reconstruction of an existing shed. So I can go through it for you if you guys
Yes,
want.
please.
Quickly on the site demolition and tree protection plan, there is a large tree at the corner, the southwest corner of the house, which is being protected. In terms of the planting that we're showing, and I don't know if we have a memo from Lucille.
Yes.
But there is significant planting in place, so I would be interested to see, what we tried to show is the existing planting that's in place, and see if the board thinks that anything else needs to be done.
With regard to, well, I think her comments were, number one, I think she wanted to see you relocate the access to the construction area. Because I think it was coming too close to that large tree that you were just talking about, John. All right, the proposed construction access clearly shows impact to the 30-inch oak. In addition, the topsoil stockpile is within the drip line, and the piping for the storm drainage will also impact the tree, and relocation of the pipe should be considered. Okay. And I think she also made some comments, possibility of doing possibly some landscaping on that slope that you're creating once you put the addition on the rear.
Right, and I think we have intent to have ground cover there. We just, hadn't shown it because it wasn't a screening-related plant, but we can
You
show
can
ground
go
cover.
add that?
Yes.
Okay, I think those are the two comments that she had. John, go through.
Oh, I thought he was fit.
Sorry. So the proposed, I think I just can show you it on the. So the house is set in Matheson Park in such a way that it's on a private drive. The existing front elevation is not really changing. The work that we're proposing is in the rear yard of the house, and so it's on the western side of the house. The goal there was to limit any visual impact on the adjacent neighbors, and then also to stay within the existing setbacks. The house, the lot is an odd triangular shape, and so the only buildable area is in that. So you'll see there's an addition that has a bedroom and a kitchen. Rear, this area. And then this existing wing is being extended slightly to provide more bedrooms on the upstairs. The goal was to try to keep the scale of the house similar to what it is now. It is a strange house for Matheson because it is very small scale. All of the existing living space on the second level is basically in the attic underneath the gable roof areas. So I can make this show. I'm just small, but not his whole family is. So the goal was to try to get a little bit more living space on the second floor while expanding. I think if you have more questions about the house and the design of it, we can go through that, or we can go through Han's memo, which we received today. I had a few questions.
I think before we go through the memo, did you have some questions, Caesar, and any other the board members have any
Not on the
questions.
house, but on the shed.
Oh, the shed. So the,
So this is the beautiful existing shed, which is entirely in the setback to the north of the house. Look at that thing. And we're proposing to rebuild it within the same footprint with a slightly different roof form that we think may be more beautiful. Where is the proposed shed? The set I had may not have the drawings for the proposed shed.
you didn't submit one.
Didn't submit one?
No.
Oh, well, then we'll send you that. So
I don't think that's what has to do with that.
Okay, good.
We're taking bets on how long, but we have a lot of other things.
Yeah, so, is this what you're doing to me? Well, anyway. You guys colluded. So the shed is similar in footprint, and we'll send you that, but it has a gable roof, so it's still quite small, but it just has a gable roof added to the top of it.
But it's in the setback.
Yes,
This
it's,
is existing, I mean, do you care about the setback?
If they were rebuilding in kind, they would need a side yard setback variance.
Footprint's in kind.
But because they're building it larger, they're increasing the nonconformity, they need a variance.
yeah, we've shown that as a required variance just because we don't think it has any impact on anybody. I think we think it has a positive impact, but it is, by letter of the law, it's increasing the volume in the setback.
Okay, in the Han, oh, I'm sorry, anybody else? No? I think in the Han memo, one item, number 6, the proposed improvements are located in the View Preservation Overlay District. Therefore, photographs from various vantage points east of the improvement should be submitted for review.
Right.
Okay.
We didn't submit that in the first case because all of the new roofs are on the west, and the new volume is on the west side of the house, and the roofs are not exceeding the height of the existing house, so we were hoping to get by without presenting view preservation because it wouldn't have any impacts of river from anybody up, to the west of the house.
I think you should verify that with the photographs.
Okay, we'll take some
And then also
photos.
because you're redoing the shed too, so you should get some photographs
Oh,
of
yeah.
the view.
The shed actually may.
Because the shed is going to enlarge.
Yeah.
enlarge.
The issue that the area where the house is not very dense in terms of other houses, so there's probably no view impacts, but we can show you that photo.
I think that was the other thing too, John. I understand that this is a small lot for Matheson Park,
Right.
but I think we'd like to see the comparison of the coverage for this property versus the properties immediately around it.
Okay.
All right.
The note that's on Hans refers to us doing an FAR analysis in addition to the coverage. The FAR that we're proposing is at 83% of allowable, even with the addition. There's a lot of work associated with that, so I'm just questioning would you like us to just do a coverage analysis, or would you also like us to do the FAR analysis? Because
Do you need to-
square footage of the Greenberg cards?
I would rather see the coverage.
yeah, if they're interested in the coverage,
I think the coverage is probably.
Yeah.
okay, because that would simplify it
Yeah.
and would give us a chance to get it in by Monday if I was on board with that.
Like similar to what you did for the house on Circle Drive.
Right. Tabular. Like and we can set the table up if, to accommodate FAR. I just don't think, since we're not asking for a variance, and it's so much below allowable, I think that we would not do that if it wasn't an issue.
Well, you're exceeding the coverage.
No, I'm sorry, FAR we're below.
Oh,
We're
yeah,
exceeding.
yes, right. Okay.
I did have one question on the rear yard setback, Doug, which is your third. It says the proposed addition is located in the rear yard setback. The building is not, but just trying to make sure I understand what that's referring to. So the setback is limited to this area, the building is limited to this area, and the setback is there.
Would that have been Camden? Is that have been mixed up with the?
There's setback issues at Camden, so I just.
I'll check that, but it could have been Camden, maybe it got mixed up.
And then I have to do this, Doug, because I didn't submit the sheet with the shed. So that's so you.
We'll send you.
Yeah, we're not.
No problem with the house, just the shed.
Do you guys
And
have anything else?
one other comment, I think there was a comment from ECB, I'm not sure it got picked up in Doug's memo. It says construction access and the areas for stockpiling soil and material need to be clearly shown, given the removal. Is
That was on
It was shown,
that was
I threw that at the meeting,
It was-
it
it was
was
in there?
shown, yeah.
Lucille said they're in the wrong place, so we'll move them to the right place.
Right, and I was going to apologize for that. They need more light in the Tiffany room.
Yeah.
We need better light in the Tiffany room, so my apologies for not reading it right. But two things, is one, it wasn't clear to us the extent of the removal of the hardscape, and we were just wondering whether there needed to be some degree of erosion control for that removal, particularly since there are often microbursts during the summer months. And then also, while I have the mic, on one of your documents, it looks like your date might be a little wrong. I'll show you.
Seems likely since, I know, they already told me that. Right. Yeah. It couldn't have been in the year one. Not possible. Okay, so we'll look, I think we have the erosion control in that area that I think you're talking about. There's a long, flat slope runoff, so there may not be a huge risk, but I think we would show erosion control around that whole area because that's the side that the addition is on.
Okay. So you'll add that?
Yeah.
Any other comments? Any comments from the audience on this matter? No? All right, then you need to go to the ZBA for this also, right?
Yes.
All right, so you're up to the ZBA, and then we'll see you in either August or September. See you in September.
All right, thank you very much.
Need a small name. Yeah. Oh, there is? There is. Okay, next item is Michael and Lori Fettner, 2 Cindy Lane.
Good evening. I'm Stephen Bassini, the architect representing Michael and Lori Fettner, 2 Cindy Lane. We were in front of your board back in March for a similar application, site plan approval for additions to a single-family house. The existing house exceeds the coverage on the property due to the code change back a few years ago, which limited it down to 12% of the lot area as opposed to 4,000 square feet in the same zone. In addition to that, the house was built with exceeding the front yard setback, I assume back before the zoning change for that as well. And so any additions to the front of the house would require a front yard setback, and any additions anywhere on this property of coverage requires a coverage variance. We came to you originally with an extension out the side of the house, the front, a sizable one in the back here, and a deck extension. Through the process of your review, we did reduce those additions. We reduced an entire variance by bringing this in off the side yard. We tried to reduce the coverage down. We came in originally at about 1,000 square feet of addition. We reduced it down to about 800 square feet. We went to the zoning board on your referral, and they asked us to reduce it greater. We reduced it back again, and ultimately it was not palatable to them. They stated essentially that even though they realized that there was it's exceeding the original, exceeding the existing allowable rather by the existing, the 20%, I think we're in a 19.6% of a variance required over what's currently there was just too much for them to swallow. So what we've done is they denied us. We came back, and what we did was originally the limitations within the house were the issue. The kitchen was situated about 2/3 of the way through the house here, then here, and the plan was really not to do anything with the kitchen, it was to save that portion of the house financially and do some additions out here. The purpose of it was to create, if you remember, a 3rd bedroom upstairs. Currently there's a single child's bedroom here, a master bedroom here, and a single bath, a powder room, then the master bath has a bathtub in it, so they essentially have to bathe their child in the master bathroom bath. So the idea was to put a 2nd bedroom up here so that they don't have to put a child downstairs when they like to expand their family, and then increase the master bedroom. What we've done is now we've moved the kitchen down further here, which increases their budget, but in order to make this work, I think it's necessary. So by pushing the kitchen this way, we were able to reconfigure the interior plan to minimize the additions. So what we've been left with is 2 bedrooms here, a reduced master bedroom and bathroom all within the footprint, with the exception of a 2-foot cantilever in the back. So the 2-foot cantilever on the 2nd floor, a 172 square foot addition here, and then the deck addition that was reduced greatly from your original application are the 3 additions that are being proposed. In addition to that, again. We're reducing 116 square feet of coverage for the existing walkway that leads from the driveway to the pool steps and back to the house again. That is being removed and reseeded, so that will be 116 feet taken out of the coverage. So ultimately, we are 414 square feet of added coverage, minus the 116 gets us below 300 square feet from the original 1,000. What that nets out at as an increase in the existing coverage of 10%. That is the variance that we would like to express to the zoning board. However, ultimately, as you've seen in Mr. Hahn's memo and on my drawings, 32% is the real number because of the code change. Hoping that we can satisfy the zoning board, and I'm hoping that we can satisfy this board as well.
Any comments from any of the board members? Okay, I think you were here last time, and it was considerably larger than this, and we approved that addition, so I don't have any problem with what you're requesting now. I don't think any of the board members do. So, does anyone in the audience want to speak to this matter? Yes?
MJ Wilson, ECB. We did not see any trees indicated on the drawing there.
There. Oh, wait.
So if there are any trees that are in any way in the area of the zone of disturbance, they need to be indicated. And then, is there construction access indicated there?
The driveway. I'm not sure what you mean.
Well, we've got the driveway going on there.
Right.
But then it looks like you've got a stockpile going on there. So all equipment is coming through this way.
Yes, construction access. Once this walkway is removed, there's construction access right back in here. This deck won't be here, so there'll be construction access right along the back of the property. And in answer to the first question, there is one tree shown here. It's an ornamental tree. It's being protected. It's within the disturbance area, but it's the only tree in the area of disturbance, and it's shown to be protected. And there's a tree protection detail on the detail sheet.
If you are going to have to resubmit this, right?
They're going to go to the ZBA.
Okay. Ornamental isn't a recognized genus or species, so if you could indicate what the genus and species of the tree and the size at breast height, that'd be great. Thanks.
Yeah. I think Lucille Munns noted on here, the proposed work does not seem to impact any trees, and tree protection detail has been provided. So, but if you just
Understood.
Just identify
Caliper and species, you got it.
I guess you can go off to the ZBA, and then you'll come back. If they approve it, then come back.
Understood.
Those changes. We'll go from there. All right?
Thank you, appreciate it.
All right.
May I ask, Ed, you were mentioning about the zoning board, is the
Deadline's Monday for our August meeting.
but historically it's been the fourth Tuesday. Was there, this July now I see it's the third Tuesday. I guess that's what I was expecting. Is it shifted for?
Always been the third Tuesday.
In July? Okay, for the rest of the year, it's the fourth
30-day
Tuesday.
notice for, promise is a 30-day notice for July and August.
Oh, because of the shift in the days, okay.
Not because of summer hours.
Summer hours.
Yeah, summer notice. There's a summer notice.
That's what I was looking for, the rest of the year, it's the fourth Tuesday, that's what confused me, okay. So it's, Friday is the deadline, understood, okay.
No. Monday's the deadline.
The following Friday is the notice, is the norm, that's what I was referring to.
15th. The notice has to be done by July 15th.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. All right, the next item is 2016-20, Viral Patel, 1 Camden Court. Hillary Snell recused herself on this matter.
John Malone, Ferguson Malone Architects, representing Cyril and Nirja Patel. This project is for an addition of a pool, a slight expansion of a deck, and then the associated hardscape with the pool and planting and a new fence. The pool is located in the rear yard of the house. The house is a walkout basement in the rear, so there is a connection between hardscape connection between the pool and the rear of the house, and then there's a deck with a new deck with a stair down is shown. terms of site demolition and tree protection, there's one tree that there's one tree that's alive that we're proposing to take down. There's an existing ornamental that needs to come out. And that's really just a result of the location of the pool. And there's a multi-stemmed river birch that's dead on the corner of the house that's coming out. There's a large oak that's shown protected that is the only tree, or there's two trees that are shown protected that we think are potentially in the work area. In terms of additional screening, the property abuts the access way to Legend Hollow on one side and has a lot of significant screening there, and also a wood fence that is a solid wood fence. The screening that we're showing along this side really has more to do with providing privacy for the house. I guess there was original screening planting there that has grown so high that the lower branches are above the fence level, so there's a little bit of view that's coming through there. So these are semi-evergreen, like viburnums and stuff that would fill in that space. The area that we're more focused on screening is the neighbor to the north, and we're showing, even though the house is very high above the pool, given the slope change, we're showing screening along that edge. I don't know if Lucille, does she have comments on this one that we should address?
Oh, yeah, this
Yes.
is on here. Okay.
The recommendation I would have is that the planning board consider requesting the applicant to install one native maple tree somewhere on the site to replace the maple canopy tree being removed.
Okay.
One comment.
What's the maple?
The 12-inch maple that's coming out because of the pool.
Okay, that one. That's good.
Yeah.
That's ornamental, that tree. All right, thank you. The tree is, the site is quite wooded, but we can do that, I think. We can add a single tree back. There are pool details shown and also some details associated with the deck, but it may make sense to go to Hans' memo or to any questions that you guys may have. It is sort of a crucial coverage issue that...
This is in Legend Hollow.
That's right.
So there are special requirements,
Yeah, there
special
are,
requirements for
actually,
coverage.
because of that, on number 1, where it says a variance may be required, that sentence should be stricken, because you can't get a variance.
Right, which means I don't have to make the Monday deadline.
That's right, that's right.
Friday notice.
It's quite enough. It's pretty good. So what I would suggest there, Ed did forward me the memorandum that Marianne did in 2014 that indicated the process by which calculate coverage. It's a little bit gray, and I was wondering if I could maybe just work that out with Marianne. I'll just go through it with her and over the phone, and we'll figure out how to do that properly and make adjustments accordingly. The other items...
The proposed fence is located on the neighboring property and should be relocated.
Right.
So Doug, was there anything in particular that stood out? I mean, it's pretty
Fence that
standard.
stays on the neighboring property.
Everything else is pretty
Right.
standard.
There is an existing pool fence that is, I think we indicated, let me just see, new chain link. I'll go through it. Our intent was to put a new pool fence on our property, move the portion of their pool fence that is on our property back to their property. So there's going to be back-to-back pool fences there, and each on their own property. That's the goal. So we'll make sure that's shown.
Any
Other
comment?
than that, it was just drainage and utilities.
Right.
And then more detail. And the correction on the survey and on the site plan for the dedicated watershed.
Right, right. Yes, we're going to add another. And the dedicated watershed is at the same, it happens to be on the same line as the Cyrus Field buffer, but it's not indicated. I just wanted it indicated.
There's a drainage easement at the end of the pool. Whose is it, and is there a pipe in there now? Or
There's a big pile of stuff in it. Let me show you quickly.
you see what I'm talking about? Right at the end of the pool.
Drainage easement was altered to a planning board application years ago.
It comes pretty close to the pool.
This is the planting plan, but as you can see, there's drainage basically draining the cul-de-sac from this point, and there's underground piping that brought it to a stabilized outlet, and at some point, when was that? It was modified some time ago.
2004?
2004. It was modified, and the stabilized outlet was replaced by this series of dry wells. So all of that drainage is basically serving the cul-de-sac, and it's...
So the line that shows that's, you know, up further up, right, it goes right parallel to the pool. It comes down, could it get
Right, this one.
You keep going, and then right there, it swings that way. Is that still used, or whose easement is that?
Well, I think everything that would be in that easement is in place, but yeah, we're outside of that easement. That easement is to provide for this drainage. I think that's what it was designed to do. Originally, that line had to do, there was a swale, like a stabilized, is that retention or a control structure, like down below that's been replaced by this dry well system.
You're right with that?
It was approved by the planning board and Ralph Mastromonaco at the time.
And could you go over the details of the pool, the filtration, the overflow, and the disinfection?
I think we're missing some notes on the how the pool would be drained. Typically, we indicate that it's to be drained by truck. We show that on the pool. The other thing we can do is when we finalize the detailing for the stormwater system, we can size it in such a way that it can handle the draining of the pool. You know, typically, the stormwater is sized as long as you don't drain the pool at the same time you're having a 100-year storm. You know, typically things will work out. So that's what we can indicate there.
And the disinfection and filtration is what?
We haven't indicated that now, but we can.
Well, I'm only concerned if there's certain filtrations have backwashes and it has to go someplace. And some filtrations don't have backwashes.
Yeah, well, we indicate on our drawings because sometimes the filtration system is, we leave that up to the pool contractors that it has to not require backwash. So that's what our note will show. Yeah, we will. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Oh, MJ.
MJ, yes.
Thank you. Now, did we miss the construction access and stockpiling on this diagram as well?
Let's see what we got here.
Clearly shown? Okay. And with that being shown, are there any trees that could possibly be impacted by the construction access and stockpile?
There's one protected tree that's in this location.
And then just the other thing, something to consider if you've got back-to-back fences, how to maintain the space in between. I mean, that can be really, really tricky and it can get bad.
Open to suggestions. Ed and I had spoken about this, whether you can do
plastic fabric and put down gravel over it in between the two fences.
Right, and just keep the fences tight and do like a wider.
Spray periodically to kill weeds that grow over there.
Right.
But isn't there like a water course around or like a?
Yeah, we won't spray. We won't spray. But there doesn't seem to be a way around.
The state's clear on this.
Yeah.
You have to have a fence on your property. That you're responsible. You can't share a fence if you have two pools back to back.
Well, you have two different pools. I mean, suppose one pool closes down, it's the pool that has the
Can they
fence,
just
so
share
you
it?
don't have a fence.
They won't let you share the pool. Oh, share the pool.
Well, that, yeah.
We have a bigger problem.
Yeah. A different issue. So is there anything else you guys need?
No? Anyone from the audience wish to speak on this matter? No, I think that's it. So I guess you have the comments you'll have to make, and you'll speak to Mary Ann about
we'll revise the
track,
coverage.
and we'll figure that out.
Okay, thank you.
All the other changes. We'll see you next month. Okay, the next item is 2016-16, Devinder Makan, Peter Bond Road. McConnell,
Yeah, I don't think anybody's here on that application.
No.
It's an application for subdivision approval. I'd like to explain to the board afterwards what it's all about. But in the meantime, I would suggest that you pass a resolution declaring yourselves
As lead
intent to
agency.
be lead agency, so we can send a notice out, and by next meeting, you'll be lead agency.
All right, can I have a motion to declare lead agency by the planning board?
Yes. So moved.
Second? All in favor? Aye. So moved. All right, the next item up then is 2016-05 Denardo Capital Court, 3040 South Broadway. Okay, we're going to take a recess for several minutes while the applicant sets up.
Sorry, I rushed you off.
Which comes first?
Not tonight. No, I'm okay. It's a rubber one. No, I'm okay.
I mean, I suppose having clearance.
You're concerned.
I think no matter
I thought it was unbuildable because the size of the accumulation would allow for building envelope would be the size of the
very shallow. It's supposed to be easier. Still have a lot of.
I think you should put it over there. Yeah, I think you did it further. You know, in that, just turn. Oh, maybe that's what he did. Perfect. Good boy.
Last time I took him down.
Now you just have to turn this thing.
Yeah, just got to show them. Can you make it back? So people in the back can see it.
Isn't it sweet?
Not that then you can't see it.
That's the funny thing, is everyone that's building this way just going to have
That is the May.
The April one is May.
Right, we didn't change, I don't know, it was just
So let me get out and you can get in.
Yeah, they can't get slide on one side.
A while ago. Is he still around? Good for him. You still up in Harmon?
Yeah.
At the sun, right? That whole area is supposed to go down the youngest. It's not gonna happen. I would think it's a no-brainer. And then you got Tarrytown and Sleepy Hollow, no problem.
At least this is more accurate.
It's so ridiculous. There should be a rule. Stupidity is not allowed.
All right.
Let me know. Give me a second.
Good evening.
Okay. Good evening.
Back in session.
Good. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. As you know, my name is David Cooper from the law firm Zarin and Steinmetz, representing Donardo Capital Corporation. The applicant here is the owner of 30 South Broadway and the contract vendee of 40 South Broadway. We are here on a site plan and subdivision application to pursue a 27-unit attached single-family development, a modern multifamily townhouse development consisting of a total of 27 units. There would be 21 market rate units as well as 6 affordable housing units qualifying for under the county settlement. We are here tonight to conduct a public hearing pursuant to your regulations and New York State town law. Any preliminary subdivision application requires a public hearing, and the board granted our request to schedule it for tonight. So it has been duly noticed, and we handed up the proof of notice to Sarah. As well as we did want to review some of the modifications and revisions to the plan that we've undertaken since the last time we've met, as well as I think we now have the ability to actually respond to some of your comments, or Hans' comments on the engineering. And I believe AKRF is also here tonight to discuss traffic. So hopefully a lot of outstanding issues can be taken care of tonight. Well, what I should do before I ask my question, let me introduce the team to you. Although I know you know the team, there are a lot of new faces in the crowd. So with me tonight is Joe and Sylvia Donardo, the applicants. Jim Ryan from John Meyer Consulting is with us tonight. The team, and Glenn Chevrier is here too as well, our architect. Richard Pearson, our traffic engineer, and Janine St. Jacques, who's been helping out with all of the visual analyses. As well as Glenn Cervani is here as the architect.
Pat, while you're doing introductions, Pat, just so the board realizes that the village's two traffic consultants are here as well from AKRF, Anthony Russo and Alan Saul.
Good evening. Good evening.
So while we do recognize that we have given a full-blown presentation probably 2 or 3 times now to your board about the application, I do see that there are new faces in the crowd tonight, and so, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, we would, at your discretion, we can either go through the entirety of the project and kind of give an overview of where we've come from and where we're at, or a more a streamlined presentation of just the changes. We can do either one.
No, I think you should give the whole presentation.
Yeah, that's what we thought as well. So let me do something. I'm going to hand it over to Jim Ryan to take you through the project, and then come back to you.
Okay.
Thank you. Good evening. We're going to break this down into really 3 segments. I'm going to take the board and the public through the overall presentation. Glenn is going to talk about the architecture, and he'll get you updated on some of the recent changes in architecture. And Richard, my partner, was going to take you through the traffic. So I'll just start with just an overall of the property.
I'm sorry to interrupt here,
Yes.
but would it be possible for you to step over?
Sure.
You've got the mic, so then people
no
can have
problem.
better visual line of sight. And
probably
we
better
need
for me.
lights? I mean, it'd be clear without lights.
Can you turn out some of the lights?
Okay.
No, leave it the way it was.
Okay, now I can't read.
You can't read that.
Say there's no.
I think that's best readable. Best readable.
Okay, okay, so as David had indicated, the property consists of 2 lots. There's 2 lots. There's one
the address is at 30 and 40 South Broadway, formerly occupied by the Foundation of Economic Education, known as the Fee property. This is located between South Broadway, and you see South Broadway down below here, and you see the Aqueduct property up at the top portion of the property. The property is 5.1 acres in size and 2 parcels. Again, the one parcel here, the larger parcel is 4.6 acres. The smaller portion of the property is 1.2 acres, and this is Station Road along that side, so you're familiar with that. It is in a multi-family zone. That is what we are proposing for the project. The project, in terms of the topography, is relatively flat on the top portion of the property. That's all of this area here. It rises from South Broadway, as everybody's aware, and the current entrance is in this location here. So it's a far portion of the property here. This property, in terms of the site plan, is proposed, as was indicated, 27 attached, one-family dwelling units in 12 buildings. So you can see the 12 buildings arranged. Now, the locations of the building have been adjusted from the initial plan. There is a creation of some new open space in here, and we'll talk about that in a little more detail in a few minutes. It also includes, beside the 21 market rate, there's 6 fair and affordable housing units. I'll just point out those units are for affordable in the upper parcel. They're located in this building right here, and including a renovation of this portion of this building right here. On the south portion, there are 2 acres. This is the existing McCann Stern residence, if some of you are familiar with that name. So this is an adaptive reuse of the property, adaptive reuse of that particular building there. The existing driveway is actually the location for the proposed driveway. It's intended to come up from South Broadway and in a loop. Recent development in this plan is one of the changes that we've made was requested by your traffic engineer to look at, and we've put that into the plan is currently a one-way circulation. The one-way circulation helps us in terms of ease of movement through the property rather than two-way. So there's a little bit more flexibility on this particular design. So we've incorporated that into the plan. It is a counterclockwise loop situation here. Okay, many of the units, especially units on the west side, are going to have views of the Hudson here. That was an important aspect. But we are maintaining the buffer areas. There are 2 buffer areas in particular that are constituting a green space. We have the Broadway buffer here, in this location here, and we have an aqueduct buffer along the back portion. So we've respected the required buffers for this property. Parking for the overall site, it's both in garage and at grade. There are 2 parking spaces per dwelling unit, so there are essentially 54 spaces required and 105 spaces proposed. That's including the 44 that are in the garage, and 61 are at grade. Now we have the at grade parking is not only in front of the buildings here, but there are some parallel parking spaces for guests along there. So at various points around the loop road for guests. When we looked at the plan in terms of the regulations, the regulatory requirements, we had to determine first off the site capacity for the property. This does comply. It's actually under the original site capacity that we calculated in accordance with the zoning, whereas the site capacity plan yielded 31 units. This has the 27 units. We do comply with all the minimum setback requirements, and as I indicated, there is a 125-foot Broadway buffer along South Broadway and a 50-foot aqueduct buffer. So those are both shown in this location here. Majority of this area back here has been preserved. There are, as you get up to the flat portion of the property here, there are stands of trees primarily along the edges of the property, and we've done our best to try to maintain and retain these trees. So it's an important aspect, we believe, for the aesthetics of the property, particularly some of the visuals that were noted of concern from this intersection here down near Station Road looking up into the property. So there's an effort been made to do these preservations, to take a look at not only how you look at this site from the inside, but how you see it from South Broadway. The plan complies with the maximum coverage requirement of 18%. That does exclude, and there is a provision to exclude the McCann Stern property here. from that coverage requirement to, because it is an adaptive reuse. So building up coverage overall. Although we did get a comment from your consultant, Hans' office, and we have recently updated, as one of the comments that we received, updated that to include some of the other physical features of the site, which include sidewalks and walls and some of the other existing features of the property. So we've updated the plan to make sure that we continue to comply with those requirements.
And you do?
And we do.
At this point?
We do at this point, yes. We've also prepared, currently in this site, because the site is somewhat developed, there is no stormwater mitigation on this property, so the effort is to comply with the current requirements by the state and the municipality for stormwater. We've done that through subsurface systems, so we have infiltrator systems designed on this property. We've provided the preliminary SWIP documents to your consultant. I know they're still in the process of doing their final reviews on those documents. As well, we have a little bit more testing to do on the property, but I think we, in the preliminary testing, I think that we found suitable soils that are relatively permeable without issues related to groundwater or rock, and those are important features of the stormwater system. And the net result, just go back for 1 second too, the net result though for stormwater off this property, because we are introducing new impervious area, is a reduction both in the volume of water coming off this property and the rate that it's coming off, so I think it's a net positive with regard to that. A couple of other things that we were requested by your board to provide, and they're now included in the newest submission, is sectional drawings. So section A, I believe, this is the Broadway, Janine, is that right? This is the north-south. So this is Station Road down in this area here, and this is the upper area of the property here. So as you notice, the contours are quite dramatic in terms of the slope here, flattening out through the majority of the property. You can just barely see there's a dashed line in terms of the existing grades here. So we are trying to maintain those grades. So there's not a tremendous amount of earthwork planned for this particular development. So we have one other section that was prepared too as part of the current package, and this is going in the other direction with the aqueduct shown on the one side here and the Broadway section here. And again, you see the difference in the topography here with all the slopes, but the preservation of the trees and protection of the views from the Broadway aspect of the property. So I'm going to turn this over to...
Could you just stop on that one?
Yep.
Is that Station Road?
Why is the one,
Station Road is down.
why is that,
I'm sorry.
No.
I'm getting these two confused.
why is the one building just a square and the others have gambrel roofs or whatever?
Hi, I'm Janine St. Jacques from JMC. That's just where it cut through the building. So where it was cutting through just the center of the building or cutting through a chimney area.
So that section is not through the buildings that are on the
Yeah, it's
the buffer. I mean, at the buffer, they're in the middle of the site.
Yeah, you could see that the red line cutting through different parts of the buildings.
Okay.
So I'm going to let Glenn, do you want to come up and talk about the architecture next, and then we'll turn it over to Mr. Pearson for the traffic. We have some new changes in the architecture.
Hi, my name is Glenn Schiavone, principal of GRCH Architecture. So, can you flick it to the architecture part? Okay. So I brought a board as well because I didn't want a thermostat in the middle of my air elevation.
It'll be a warehouse.
So we're very green. So on the top portion of the page is the front elevation. This is a typical streetscape that throughout the community is what's considered a non-walkout building. We do have part of the site that has rear walkout basements. This is a standard elevation for all of the other building types. There will be deviations in the building types, but we just wanted to show representation of this is what we would call 2 units together. And this is a shingle style in its nature. We have multiple gambrel roofs, gable roofs. We have multiple levels of roof, plate heights, so we do play quite a bit with the roof lines as they go up and down, and as well as how we treat the garage doors. We've recessed them a little bit, so as you do continue down the road, the garage doors are recessed in a little bit from the elevation so that the other parts of the elevation will pop better. The rear elevation is something that we were requested to further develop, and this is the non-walkout rear elevation. And we've since developed it much further than it was before. So you can see that the rear elevation has many of the same features as the front. So, and that was the direction and the directive from the client and this board that we propose many features that were, where there was no diminishing from the front to the back. And that's what I believe we did in a fantastic, beautiful way. So again, it's the same description for the rear as it is from the front. Multiple roof lines, gable roof lines, reverse gables, 1-story roof lines with metal, standing seam metal roofs. So, and we also do a nice detail with reminiscent of many shingle styles is we flared, we created a skirt, a shingle skirt at the 2nd story level as well as the base. So we think together, it's very hard, I'm sure, for anybody to distinguish where the front of the house is and where the rear of the house is. And that was one of the goals as well. So either I can take questions or you want to wait till
Well, the issue is actually the front doors are on the sides of the units.
Yes, they are.
So what you're seeing as you drive down the street, that's not what you're seeing as you drive down the street.
That is not what you're seeing. You're seeing the top.
That's what you're seeing.
You're seeing the top.
top.
Yes.
Do you have a rendering of the south, the 2 units that face south that have walkouts, an extra story?
I don't have that board with me, no.
So we can look at what...
You mean the walkout condition?
Yeah.
Yes.
I honestly didn't think we were...
I just wanted to see what that would look like.
I don't know if that's on the...
Is that
on...
The top part would be the same? The
focus on the roof.
The focus is on the roof, really.
Would
it be the same, the roof line?
Oh, the only difference we have with the walkouts is the height.
Yeah.
We're restricted, we don't gain, just because we have a walkout, we're not allowed more height.
Right.
So
the roof line is going to be the same as the back of this?
But not as high, but not nearly as high, yes. It'll be similar, but it will be different. I don't want to say it's the same, because of the height restrictions, we are significantly lower in that elevation. Our ridge line is significantly lower because we take it up the space.
We're going to have to see what...
Do you have one of your, does one of your sections show that? Show
That
the
side
units?
section?
Yes, show the units along the Station Road elevation. You don't have that?
Well, you have 2 sections there. So that one there.
So the building on the left is a mock-up of Station Road.
Right. See, and you say that the top roof line is going to be slightly different because you had to shrink it down.
Yes.
Now, we would like to see, there's a concern from the view from Station Road not to look up and see barracks or a straight line.
Well, we've presented that elevation.
And what you do here, this is better, this is good, because this is different than what you had last time, which you came back with this. But it's uncertain what this will look like facing south, because you say you had to make it different, so I don't know.
Is it in your set of plans?
Yeah. It has been submitted, so it should be.
But you don't have a rendering like this?
We do, but we didn't bring that tonight, because honestly, we didn't think we were presenting that this evening.
I think you make sure you bring that, yeah, we'll have to see it.
We'll present it next, yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Does it look similar to this?
Yes. Yes, it actually, the fireplaces are the same, the roof, the facial lines are the same. They're not done exactly the same way or steeply, but yeah, we do have some reverse gables to them, yes.
Okay. It'll probably be all right. I would like to see.
Yeah, we'll bring it next time.
Okay, you continue.
That was my presentation. I'm happy to answer any other
And
questions.
this is essentially what you look at from the aqueduct?
Yes, yes.
Well, what you can see above the wall?
The wall, correct.
And from Broadway.
Yes, any place you can
Any
see an
area of the
elevation.
exterior except for the Station Road elevation.
Correct.
The units, the existing units to the north, to the back of this.
Yes.
Any other
Hey,
questions?
which comprises the majority of the project. It's just those few walkouts, that's it.
Folks in the public, we're going to hold the questions for the public till the end, right? Let the applicant make their presentation and any questions from the planning board, and then we'll open it up to the public.
And we don't know, so we don't know yet what the affordable building looks like.
Looks the same.
Is the, well, that's the question, is the affordable, what is the affordable building? The exterior,
characters, yeah.
but it's not exactly the same, because you have,
Because the mass in the building is a little bit
it's smaller or it's larger, isn't it? It's a smaller building?
smaller building, yeah.
Good evening.
Good evening. Okay. Richard Pearson with JMC. I'm a partner of Mr. Ryan's. I'm a professional engineer and a professional traffic operations engineer. We've prepared a traffic study for this project. We've also coordinated the site access and related issues with your consultant, AKRF, as mentioned, who are here tonight. So I'll discuss the access first. What we have, what's shown up on the exhibit at this time is the site driveway for the primary driveway, the northern driveway for the property. This shows the site distance for vehicles exiting the site and looking to their left. The other site distance looking to the right is acceptable as far as the standards that we use for evaluating site distance, which is based on the travel speeds of the roadways and the roadway grades. What we have is existing conditions. There is a limitation to the site distance, and it's attributable to on-street parking. There are 7 parking spaces on the west side of South Broadway that are shown in this area, right in here. This is the proposed site driveway, which is at the same location as the existing driveway. What we have proposed to do is to have some striping in this area of the site driveway to allow vehicles exiting the site to come out a little bit farther, but we are still, as you look at the thermostat, again, we'll be removing some parking in this area to satisfy the site distance requirements. We're recommending to remove either 5 or 6 spaces, and we'll work out those details with the State Department of Transportation, and your input is always welcome as well. And what we've done is we've looked at what is the potential impact of eliminating those spaces, and is there an opportunity to replace those spaces nearby? If you can go to the next exhibit, Ginny. So we had done a study of the existing on-street parking. This is the site here, the existing driveway, the 7 spaces that I was just referring to. And so we looked at the utilization of these 7 spaces as well as the 9 spaces along this portion of South Broadway, the 8 spaces on the east side of South Broadway, and the 29 spaces within the Irvington Municipal Lot known as Lot Number 7. Based on our studies, we looked at the parking utilization on a weekday morning and midday as well, and we also looked at it on a Friday night with the recognition that there's a nice restaurant right here, so we wanted to make sure that that had been considered as well. We did find that there was surplus parking during all the times that we looked at, but we are willing to mitigate the loss of the on-street spaces. If you can go to the next slide. This is the parking lot 7, accessed off of Field Point Drive. South Broadway is right here, Main Street is right over here. The existing parking lot has angled parking spaces here and has parallel spaces in this area. What we're proposing to do is to expand the parking lot along the east side and provide angled parking spaces where they're currently the parallel spaces. By doing the angled spaces, which will require a retaining wall and a temporary easement for grading from the Field Point condominium property, we're able to gain a net 7 spaces in this area. So we could potentially provide all 7 or somewhere less than that, depending on how many spaces are removed and how the village feels about the modifications to that parking area. But that essentially summarizes the access and on-street parking related to our proposed development. And relative to the traffic study itself, we looked at conditions during the weekday AM and PM peak hours typical for residential developments. We studied 5 intersections beginning at Station Road and continuing up north to Main Street. We analyzed those conditions based on existing conditions during the peak hours. We also looked at future conditions without the project, known as no-build conditions, and we considered the other developments that are proposed in the area, including the Brightview Assisted Living Project, which is no longer proposed. And we also looked at the full reutilization of our existing office building and residential components. The site traffic for future conditions with the redevelopment as 27 townhouses will be less than the full occupancy of the existing space based on data published by the Institute of Transportation Engineers, known as ITE. ITE has data for many different types of developments based on studies conducted throughout the United States of actual counts of these different developments. I'm a member of the ITE, and in fact I'm now a fellow, so I guess that means I'm getting old, so that's all I can figure. With that comparison, we also did a conservative analysis where we did not take any credit for pedestrians from our site as compared to vehicles, where logically, being that the site is immediately adjacent to downtown Irvington, people will walk to and from the restaurants and some other stores, as well as the train station and the schools, but we considered everything as if they were driving, and we didn't take any credit for pedestrians. With that, our driveway operations operate at a good level of service without any substantial delays. We have improved the site distance primarily by removing those parking spaces as well as modifying a portion of the existing retaining wall. Based on those modifications, we will propose to have full movement, left turns into and out of the site. For comparison purposes, Sycamore Lane, located on the east side of South Broadway, just to the north of our site driveway, has left turn prohibited out of the roadway. That roadway has an alternative for the traffic volumes where they can travel southeast along Sycamore and access Station Road just to the east of the traffic signal and come out under the traffic signal control. Also, there's limited sight distance on Sycamore, which is right here. Thank you, Janine. This is Sycamore. There's limited sight distance coming out of Sycamore looking to your right, which makes sense why they prohibit the left turns. As I mentioned before, the Sycamore does continue down here and intersects Harriman Road in this area. I think that summarizes. Also we had recommended a potential signal timing modification at the intersection of Harriman Road and Station Road with South Broadway. There is actuation on the side roads, Harriman Road and Station Road, that controls how much green time those side roads can get, and we're just recommending a slight modification to that. It would be subject to the state approval, and the state would typically implement those improvements if they felt they were beneficial. And we'll coordinate with the state as the application proceeds, and we'll submit our study and our site distance plans and our recommendations.
A couple of questions. Number one, because of the location of this site, it's in town, it's the buffer and the gateway into the village, and it's very close to downtown. What have you done for pedestrian access from your site into the downtown village and into the surrounding area?
There is a proposed sidewalk that currently doesn't exist.
Can you go back to the site plan?
Yes,
your proposed site plan is
thank
shown.
you. Yes.
Earlier on, I think.
Yes. That had it.
That last one.
That had it.
Yeah.
Getting dizzy. There it is. Okay, so we are proposing a sidewalk in this area that does not currently exist, which gets you to South Broadway. Also, there's a bus stop right in this area, so people from our site could choose to use the bus stop for the county buses. And also the access to the aqueduct, the old Croton Aqueduct, is right in the rear portion of the property, and there's a proposed sidewalk to that aqueduct. So people who want to go over to Town Hall, for example, just walk out the back and come to the aqueduct and walk right on over to the village.
What type of wall is back there now, or fencing is back there now between the aqueduct and the property? Is it a wall? Is it chain link fence?
There's an existing stone wall and a brick wall. Yeah.
Take it off. Just take the microphone out.
He's a little bit taller. So along that side is a brick wall, and then along this side is a stone wall, but I believe we were proposing to continue the brick wall and then have a fence on top of it, a wood fence.
Oh, and there'll be a break in there.
Oh yeah, break with there will be a gate where that sidewalk continues.
Controlled gate?
Yeah, how are you gonna do that?
Yeah.
Pasco.
Yeah,
It'll be
controlled
controlled gate at Pasco.
Pasco?
Yep.
On the parking that you're proposing on South Broadway, in the parking lot, are those full-size spaces or are they compact spaces?
I believe we ended up getting, can you go back to that figure, please?
No, the actual parking lot.
Finished parking.
There you go. Right. The new spaces, the new angled spaces, are those full-size or are they for compact cars?
They are compact spaces in terms of depth.
How far would you have to go to get full-size spaces there?
Well, we could go
2 feet.
Yeah, 2 feet, which doesn't appear that we have unless we had some more cooperation with the condominiums, or we could potentially have full-size spaces, but fewer of them. So perhaps we get 5 or 6 rather than the 7 by changing the angle and increasing the space.
So that proposed retaining wall is right up against the village's property.
Right.
In that case, we just need an easement, a construction easement.
Correct. That's why we were trying to just have it be a temporary easement from the county.
So we would need a permit, we'd need to acquire a couple of feet of space if we wanted to do that.
Right, or an easement, right, if the village were...
If we wanted
Right, if the village were
full-size space.
to obtain that, then we would pay the cost of the additional space.
Well, how many spaces would you get full-size without going on to the other property, just with the access easement?
I'm not sure. Right now, we could look into that.
Probably lose a couple of spaces to go for severe angle.
Yeah, I think I'd like to see that. I think we'd like to see that.
Well, very often when their spaces are full, compact space, regular-sized cars become compact size.
They do. On the other hand, I've got a Toyota Highlander, and I think of that as a relatively large car. It's only about 15.5 feet long, so it's not considered a compact, but the full-size spaces are designed to accommodate a vehicle that's 18 feet long, and there's very few of them. A Chevy Suburban, some of the larger pickup trucks, these type of vehicles are those full-size, but the vast majority of vehicles are somewhere between a full-size and a compact space.
The steeper you make the angle, the harder to maneuver.
Right, there's a it's a one-way system now for those existing angle spaces, and there's a turnaround area that's back in this area where there's no parking here or here. So vehicles, either they come in and they park currently, and when they're leaving, since there are the parallel spaces here, they come in and they drive around here, unless some of these spaces are not being used, and they come and back up and leave that way. So similarly, for these spaces, if they were to utilize these spaces, or when they utilize these spaces, they'd come in here, turn around, and then pull in, and then pull out and leave that way.
It may be possible we can look at too, because these are the same size spaces here, but we're familiar with parking in there too, to maybe expand the other side.
Right, we can look into that option as well.
Size spaces.
There is a drop-off in the grade, and there's a retaining wall here, yeah, so the closer we get to the retaining wall, that's where it needs to get a little bit complicated.
What about foot access to parking?
There's a
I know there is
existing,
now.
right, there's an
Planning
existing,
on putting another one at the other end, closer to your houses?
we were not, our residents would not need to park over here. We have parking spaces on site that exceed the village's requirements, so we don't expect that our residents would use this.
Any consideration to rehab the existing steps?
We have not. The particular concern, I believe you may have been the gentleman who mentioned it at the last meeting or 2 meetings ago, and when I got back to my car over there, I walked up the steps, I said, they don't seem so bad to me, so we can talk about it, but, yeah. But,
I almost fell down them once because of the darkness and there was no, I didn't see a railing.
if it's for a railing or something like that, we could look into that.
Just back to the lights, the traffic lights for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking about the lights on Harriman Road and Station Road.
Right.
Now, when you're slowing them down and they're making a turn to go north, the light on Main Street also has to be brought into consideration for that, because the traffic will just keep backing up.
Right, we'll work with the state. We have our software that the state utilizes. They'll review our computer analysis and they'll weigh in on that, and it will consider the relationship to the Main Street intersection.
Because with the train traffic, the traffic
Understood, yeah.
all over the place.
Well, isn't it possible to do a no left turn at certain hours? Out of the development.
There.
We had talked about doing that with Continuum, and I think that you're going to generate a little bit more traffic with it.
Well, I think we raised those questions with AKRF. Maybe can you respond to some of these issues?
Sure. Just again, Anthony Russo from the.
We're gonna have to take a microphone.
Still taller than me, so. A couple of things I like to just point out. I'll get to that question.
We just want to remind the public that you're
Yeah,
from...
Anthony Russo from AKRF, the
And
traffic
you're
consultant.
representing the village.
Village, correct. Where they're proposing to put the parking in the lot here, you can keep it on that slide. There would be some large trees that will come out. I just want to point that out to the board. And I don't know if there's any chance to replant trees or somewhere else to make up for what's being lost. So that's just one issue I wanted to point out. The other issue when it comes to turn restrictions, with the site distance improvements that Richard went through that he's proposing, we feel, as long as the DOT approves, that we would achieve acceptable site distance and no turn restriction would be necessary. Again, that's contingent on New York State DOT approving the striping plan that Richard presented. I would say in general that the applicant should meet with DOT to discuss the striping plan, also to discuss the retimings of the traffic signals, of which our latest meeting with JMC, Main Street was also proposed to be retimed as well, to get DOT's input on the retiming and the site distance. And with the board's permission, that if AKRF could attend that meeting with the applicant so we could hear what's being said and report back to the village.
Sure.
Okay?
And what about the conditions on Station Road and Harriman Road from the retiming? What happens to traffic on those side streets trying to get out onto Broadway during the peak hour?
You want to address that, Rich?
Sure.
I'll just say it here.
Good. They would continue to have sufficient capacity. We would be reducing the amount of green time for the maximum that they would get, but virtually all times that we've looked at, there would be sufficient capacity to process those vehicles. There are loop detectors in the roadway that sense if there are vehicles there, so as a vehicle approaches and others behind that vehicle, the traffic signal, when it gives it the green indication, will continue to give it that green indication up until the point that there are no further vehicles. And once those vehicles are off the detector, then the detector tells the traffic signal controller, a computer within the control cabinet, that we've processed all these vehicles and let's go on to the next phase.
But is there a maximum green time?
There is a
for
maximum
the sign?
green time, so what we are recommending is to reduce that maximum green time by about 5 seconds. Based on our analysis, we are seeing that there's a substantial amount of surplus maximum green time given to those phases. And so we can, go ahead.
No, that 5 seconds is from Harriman Road.
From both.
I thought it was higher for Station Road. It was 15-second.
I think I'll double check it, but I'm pretty sure that we're taking 5 seconds off of each of those and then giving that additional time to South Broadway.
We check it because I think it says 15 seconds. And the question is, what is the maximum green time now on those side streets? Do you know?
I'll take me a minute to check it.
Okay.
Also, there,
May I ask, Alex, do you remember the timing changes by any chance?
Well, here I've got.
Also,
It's here. It says during the peak weekday PM hour, the Station Road approach increases in delay to a level of service D. And this is, I'm sorry, that's the signal timing improvements consist of shifting 15 seconds of green time from the Station Road approach to the South Broadway approaches, as well as shifting 5 seconds of green time from the Harriman Road approach to the South Broadway approaches. So I'd like to know, like, what then becomes the maximum green time for the Station Road and for Harriman Road? Okay.
Also, we're talking about the light on Harriman Road, Station Road, and Main Street. There's another light on Harriman Road just before Station Road. Is that included in all of this? Timing?
No, on Broadway.
To the east?
It's right on Harriman
It's
Road,
right up
coming north.
It's two lights. It's
There's
two
two
lights
lights there.
that essentially operate as one signal.
No, they don't.
They don't.
They don't.
They do not.
Well, they're staggered. I mean, you come out of Harriman Road and you can't come out of Station Road, or vice versa. So, yeah, so it's an offset. It's an offset.
Right, but the east and west approaches are offset, but the signal controller operates them as if they're offset.
As a unit.
So what you're saying, which is a master controller that controls both traffic signals, correct?
I mean, if you want to take a minute to look for that, Rich.
Sure. Jim can actually speak up.
Changes I want to just
Okay.
discuss with the board while before
Anthony, did you note how many trees would have to be removed to create that parking lot?
I think if you go back to the plan, I think it shows the number of trees. Am I correct, Jim?
So wait till you, so
It's not on this plan, we have it on another plan.
well, it looks like at least 4 trees there.
Yeah, I see 4 trees, but is it more than that?
Janina, I believe that's it, right?
The 4 trees.
And then if we were to go the other way, going towards Broadway, it's just shrubbery. Are there any trees facing the parking lot from between Broadway and the parking lot?
Where exactly are you referring to?
Well, I'm talking about if we decided, again, rather than to go into Field Point property.
Oh,
if
go
we
back
were
the
to
other way,
Yes,
correct.
going back towards
Understood.
Broadway, and you start extending the parking lot in that direction.
Gotcha.
Are there any trees in that island there, or is that just shrubs? We have to take a look at that.
Not certain.
That's how it gets transcribed.
Just a couple of other changes that I didn't point out in the initial presentation. A lot of these comments came from the Han memorandum dated June 1st, I believe. So, as I indicated, one of the major changes, go back to the site plan while Richard's looking at the traffic. One of the changes that we've made is, one of the bigger changes is the loop and the one-way system. But we also added in some no parking fire lane signs that were requested. So that was added in the overall plan. As well as you'll see in the latest set of plans, we did the updated simulation for the fire trucks moving around to be able to show that we can get the larger vehicles, fire apparatus through that area. So those are two of the significant changes. There's also some changes that were pointed out about the backup area on some of these driveways here. So we've extended, one case, I think this is Unit 5 here, Janine? So Unit 5 is here, so that was extended 5 feet, and on the other side, which you can't see easily, is that? Yeah. So there's a couple of other backup areas that were extended 10 feet. So to make the backup areas a little bit more convenient for parking turning around. The grading plan, there was some comments about updating the grading plan with more spot elevations and updating our table too, which gives you an indication on calculation of the heights of the building, so that was provided as well. There's a lot more information on stormwater, and I talked to Doug before the meeting, and I know there's still some work to be done on that, so we'll be actively looking and working on that particular aspect of the plan. Coverage requirements have been updated, as I had indicated before, and there's cut and fill analysis has been provided too. So, we had a good deal of comments that were addressed and some that we're still working on too. And again, we're looking for input, which I guess we're going to get within a week or so. So that the next time we come back to the board, we'll have hopefully a majority, or if not all, of these comments addressed. So.
You have the routing of any overflow piping from the stormwater retention basins, not basins, subsurface systems?
Yeah, we have that on here. Why don't you bring that up?
Because Pat had raised the question about knocking trees down.
Right. So.
Or not knocking trees down.
Yeah. It actually, when we, and I did look at that, I was aware that comment came at the last meeting. So the routing here for the discharges in this location here. So you see the tree plan here. So what we're really trying to do is we are trying to bring it through an area here. It may be possible to bring it straight down, a little more direct. However, the slopes are a little bit more, I think, conducive to laying this pipe in here without increasing the velocities to any great extent. So, but what we did, Mr. Manfredi, is we tried to bring it down. You see it's coming down through the trees here. But I think we have some flexibility also in the field to stake that out and make sure that we take down the minimum amount of trees. We know that that's an important visual for this too. So, so we made an effort on that. But I think once we stake it out in the field, we're going to know better. We probably have some room to move that or adjust that if we need to.
Yeah, because
the trees are not only for the sake of the trees, but it's screening.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And I think, again, as Caesar was saying, it's for the sake of the screening too. I think you're going to get a copy of Lucille Munz's letter that she sent tonight. One of the comments was she was concerned about that routing there.
Okay.
It would severely damage those trees, and the major trees. And she made some suggestions of alternate routing. I think maybe.
Okay. We'll look at it.
Well, at some point, I think there should be a site visit with her to go through all of the landscaping comments and tree removal comments. So
we can do that, and also at some point we'll stake this out here to make sure that's the proper routing.
It's not only avoiding the trees, but the root systems.
Yes.
I mean, that's a tough slope to be digging horizontally.
Right.
You'd have to bench, you'd have to
right in this area here.
And I walked it, it's not, I think you can find another place to run it.
Okay.
What about the other side? Yeah, see how you have up top?
Other side of the house here.
Yeah, go up top, up. Where
Up
those,
higher?
right there, those three right there.
No,
Why can't,
we want to keep it east.
right, but to route, to put in on the McCon property rather than,
We want to keep it as far east as possible.
Right. Well, I think we'll take some time to study that, and make sure that everybody's comfortable with that route. That's something we can definitely do.
And how that overflow is going to be dissipated before it hits the brook too.
Right. Well, it is coming out, the volume is coming out less, and the velocity is coming out less, but we do have to look at the discharge too to make sure it's not.
You're going to analyze that, and Doug will take a look at that too, to make
Right.
sure that, that there isn't, we don't create erosion.
Right.
At the end of it. Okay. And again, also, it's important to preserve as all those trees within the buffer area.
Okay. All right. We'll study that a little bit further. So, Mr. Chairman, if the public has any comments or the board has any more comments, Richard has.
Before we open up to the public, just want to check and see if we'll let Rich address the timing issue, and then any more comments from the board members, and then we'll open up to the public.
Pat, and I would say that if any of the board people have questions about traffic, it's a good time to raise it because our consultant's out here. And so you should fix this tonight.
Okay, regarding the traffic signal, currently the signal operates with a 130-second cycle, which is a relatively long cycle. It's the amount of time that when one of the roads, such as Harriman Road, turns green for one phase until the time it goes through all the phases till it returns back to Harriman Road for a green time. That's 130 seconds, so just over 2 minutes. Currently, it gets up to 40 seconds of green time plus a 5-second interval for yellow and all red indications for both the Harriman Road and Station Road approaches. And with the timing modifications, we would have a reduction. You were correct. Yes. So thank you for that. So we have a reduction to 35 seconds of green time and continuing with the 5 seconds of the yellow and all red for the Harriman Road approach, and 25 seconds of green time and 5 seconds of the yellow and all red for the Station Road approach.
That's the maximum.
That's the maximum. We're saying, we're recommending that to be the maximum, and when there is not that demand, it will not give it that much green time. And what we're showing is that even with these changes, there's sufficient capacity. There's for the Station Road approach, it's actually approximately 40% of the capacity is being utilized. So it's still getting time where it doesn't need it, according to computer analysis. So we think that at times it'll be even better than that. It'll switch over and it'll give the time back to South Broadway.
Where does Main Street come into this?
Main Street comes into it relative to the green time allocated and how the intersections work together. So we'll look at that, as I mentioned before, with the state DOT. I'm sorry, you did ask about it, and then Anthony had mentioned it. We did look at some minor changes to the Main Street intersection by reducing the maximum green time for the protected arrow left turns from Broadway onto Main Street and onto Field Point by reducing that from 20 seconds total time to 15 seconds, and then giving 1 extra second to Main Street. So this is something, again, we'll review with DOT, and if they choose to implement the improvements, then that would be done.
Okay. Any other comments from the board at this point?
Well,
No?
I have 2 comments. So, are you aware of the proposal of the Trent Building putting in parking down at the bottom of Station Road? Astorbuck, sorry. Have you taken that into account?
Which development? I'm sorry.
Formerly known as the Trent Building, which is at Buckout and Station Road.
They're in front of the village to put in 48 parking spaces in the grassy knoll that is currently there.
I'm not familiar with that, so we can look into that.
And I don't know
So
what's
it
going to
wasn't
happen.
included in your analysis?
It was
then?
not.
Okay, because I think we had mentioned that a couple of sessions ago on that too.
Yeah, I
That
don't recall
was
this
something that-
discussion, so. yeah.
That's going to affect your backup on Station Road and your wanting to probably give more green time.
Yeah, I mean, we're flexible. We don't have to make those adjustments, so we just had put that out there for consideration.
I don't necessarily know that it's going to happen, but it's a proposal.
Okay.
Okay. At this point, we'll
Yeah, no, I just want, one other
John?
thing that I just want to make sure gets in the site plan. It's a small thing, but I don't want to lose track of it, so, and it doesn't have to do with traffic. When you revise the site plan, indicate that the Benjamin Franklin historical marker is going to be preserved. There was already an agreement from the applicant to the Board of Trustees that should be shown on the site plan.
Okay. Thank you. All right, we're going to open it up to the public at this point. Could I just have a show of hands at this point? How many people wish to speak this evening? Okay. Well, I'm going to try and keep this orderly and on time here. So what I'd like to do is limit person's comments tonight to 3 minutes each. We're not going to close the public hearing this evening, so if you don't get a chance to speak this evening, you'll certainly get a chance to speak at next month's meeting. All right, so if we have a show of hands again, can we start with Ms. Zeisler? Why don't you start? Everybody state your name, please, and where
My
you
name is
live.
Charlotte Eisler. I live on Station Road. I wish to speak on behalf of a lot of my neighbors on and off Station Road. I've attended virtually all the meetings relating to this project. I am impressed by all the planning that has been done, but we haven't talked about people. We talk about 29 units up on the hill and 2 more down on the Pond Stern property. And I'm thinking, people. How many more people are going to be living there? We live in an area of Irvington. I have lived in Irvington for over 40 years. It's been the best experience of my life, and I've lived in lots of places. But there are many, many things that we continue to be concerned about. One of them is the sheer crowds that we're going to invite into this area that is about to be built. I'm personally surprised that 2 adjoining properties that are not that large have been zoned to multifamily purposes. And it seems to me, from all I've heard, traffic, drainage, appearance, the character of the Irvington Village, which I think will be permanently impacted and not to its benefit, are things that continue to concern us. I still don't know what's going to happen with the drainage. I've heard all the presentations. That is fine. I have lived through major drainage problems elsewhere, and it sounds good on paper, it sounds good in the presentation. What happens when we have stormwater coming off, snow melting? I happen to live right under this particular project that's proposed, and I am not at all convinced it's all going to happen the way it's been explained. I'm also very concerned on behalf not just of us who live around there, but of the village as a whole, about traffic. I have heard all the learned presentations about the changes, the angled spaces, the striped spaces. Nobody has tried to get out of an angled space on Broadway backwards during a very rushed period. We're going to have a lot of crashes, I expect. I expect other complications, and I don't want to take time away from the other people who wish to speak, but I think it's too many people in too small a space, and I believe that this commission and the Board of Trustees should take that in consideration. They will not endear themselves if they say yes to all of this, and then a lot of Irvington people are going to be very unhappy. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let me just make one comment here, too, because there might be a misconception here among some people in the public. This project does not have to go back to the Board of Trustees. The Board of Trustees has already approved the zoning for this parcel, all right? So it is really up to the planning board at this point for the site plan approval, okay? Just so everybody is aware of that. And we'll get around. Yes, ma'am.
I'm Barbara Wright, 84 Station Road, and this is an aesthetic issue, not a development issue. Since we're going to obviously have changes to that corner, since the property's going to change hands and there are new plans to be implemented, and I trust that they'll be done with the concerns that we've all expressed, I would just like to point out that there's a pedestrian safety issue that we could also improve while we're doing this, and that's the sidewalk that leads from Broadway down towards the Station Road Tunnel. There are portions of sidewalk that are available all the way from Broadway to Buckout Street, and they can't all be continuous because of the nature of the stream and all the other things that get in the way. But I'd like to encourage you to incorporate a sidewalk on the north side where it wraps around the corner, around the Kerma Stands, that branch, that property. And also I want to just express my concern that the existing stone wall, the foundation wall around FEE, which does have the historic marker, one of the very few left in our area, and a break in it that demarks a footpath that used to lie down, that should be preserved as part of the look without losing any trees.
Okay. All right, thank you. Yes, sir.
Donald Eisler, 101 Station Road. I really disagree that 25 seconds to get out of Station Road is generous. I've lived there also over 40 years, and that's not how I see it at all. I wonder, is it possible to see the other diagram? Because I have not seen on any of these diagrams exactly where our house, which sits beneath it, exactly where it is.
You see the white area
See the white?
in the upper left corner? The
Can
white
you
area?
point to it,
That's
please?
the outline of your house right there.
That's the outline, thank you. And so there's this one building above. I would be interested to know how far back from the top of the hill would that building at the top be that's closest to us?
Can you point out, Jim, where the existing single-family structure is?
So
That's
that's
right,
us.
that's-
That's
that's
us.
the-
How
There-
far
there's
back
an
is
existing
How
building.
far? Then there's the hill.
Go up.
There's an existing building
Yeah.
on the fee property in that back corner.
We're building.
That, yeah, how far is that setback from the top of the hill is what interests me.
Have to estimate that.
Jim, go to the profile, Jim.
Yeah, profile's better.
50 feet back from the top of the house. And I also saw something, I'm sorry, I'm not an architect, I don't think, the previous map that showed all of that had something, lines sticking out near our house. I wondered what those were. Would it be possible to look at that just for a moment?
Oh, it's the house cut.
It's about 110 feet, I would say,
110 feet from us?
from this building to that building.
Uh-huh, yeah. There were also, in the previous, the one that was on just before this, if we could look for it just for a minute, I just want to ask you a question, what something represents. The one before that showed where all the buildings are. I don't know what that one is called. Yeah, no, yeah, that. No, there was another one. Yeah, those, these lines, I wonder, what are those things?
Those are just dimension, they're lines that indicate the various catch basins here. They provide information on the design of the.
So is stuff coming right down
They
there?
are not pipes.
No,
They are not pipes.
They're just notes.
The notes, I see, okay, because it looked like it was heading directly.
No, I understand.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Dan Maillet, 47 Station Road. Traffic is the biggest thing I'm concerned with, as having lived on the street for so many years, it's a major access way to the train station. And we have the tunnel, which is very quaint, that you get one car at a time, but you have significant backups. Usually you can have 2 or 3 cars. Now you only have 25 seconds to get across. What's going to happen? You know, during rush hour and things like that. I just don't think that's enough. And I think you get backups on Broadway. I think all of this is really going to make the quality of our life much worse over time. And the second point is, I remember all the years of going from the south, going up there, and you see, especially in the summer, but even in the winter, you see a nice hill. It looks beautiful with a quaint house, and now you're going to see a big Long Island style complex. Beautiful, big mansions, you know, but I don't really think that's the way I see Irvington is it's very tough to build in Irvington, and there's bad sides and there's good sides. But the good sides is so far you've kept the quality of our properties and the views and everything looking really nice. I don't view, when it's all said and done, if it gets built, you know, a few years ago, we'll see in the winter, we'll see that we're not getting what we thought.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes.
Frank Gamble again.
Just say your name again.
I just wanted to know, do the...
Mr. Campbell, just say your name again, please. Just say your name again, I forget.
Oh, Frank Campbell.
Thank you.
I just want to know, are the people who are doing this depending on or want access to the parking where the aqueduct meets Main Street?
Do they want access to that?
Yeah, in other words, they could come out onto the aqueduct, go to their car.
Pedestrians can.
Are they depending on that? Because the village is planning...
No, they're depending on the parking on site. They're depending on the parking on site for the residents.
Oh, okay, because I know the village is planning 2 mini parks for...
No, I don't speak for them, but there are 2 garage spaces and 2 outdoor parking spaces per unit that's being
Okay.
proposed.
Okay, just wanted to
Okay.
verify.
Sure. Yes, ma'am, in the back.
Go ahead.
All the way in the back.
Hi, Nancy Lonke, 55 Station Road. Could someone clarify what the parking situation is for the McCarn Stern property, for those 2 affordable units?
Mr. Ryan or Mr. Pearson?
There are,
Microphone. You could take this
there are 4 parking spaces shown on here. There are some small improvements to the existing driveway here, so but we have 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces with backup distance there
And
too.
for visitors, where are they supposed to park?
And they would park in that lot.
So it's more, so there's less than 2 spots per each of those units?
2 meets the code requirement, that's
Okay,
correct.
okay. And is there a reduction in the open green space that exists now?
Essentially stays the same with the exception of a little bit of a driveway change there, but it's
Mhm.
just probably a
Because just from an
few
aesthetic
hundred
point of
square
view,
feet.
that is beautiful green
Yeah.
open space
Yeah.
that is very pleasing.
should remain essentially
Okay.
the same.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. You're next. No, yes, this lady up front, and then you're next.
Hi, I'm Leslie Walter from Dobbs Ferry. I'm a member of the Friends of the Old Croton Aqueduct. I'm asking about how high the additional fence would make the total fence that's going to be on the east side of the aqueduct, on the west side of your houses. And also, when you look from the aqueduct, how much of this elevation would you see? I saw a picture, I think, in the library that showed you would be seeing half of the first level, all of the second level, and all of the roof. Am I right, or was that?
Can you pull up this section and comment?
There is a section you have.
Yeah, that's what she's going to look that up.
Well, do you have,
You had slide once that
you
showed
have the
the-
renderings that you had, the showing,
Yes,
the
this is the
Photoshop
renderings.
images of the view from the aqueduct.
You have that.
It's from the video.
Okay.
No, it's just from the pictures.
Oh, we don't have that.
Just answer.
Isn't it, it's,
You provided a rendering last month.
yeah.
Yeah, there was enough on,
Could you put your hand here, see what you see?
I'm going to let Janine, who's more familiar with the design on that.
So-
This is-
My question is, how tall will that total fence be once you add to it?
So the
brick
fence is only being added to, well, if we go on, I know it's really small, but the fence is only being added to where the existing stone wall currently is. It's really low, and there's
Oh,
a chain link.
I meant elevation, I meant height, not length of the fence.
I know, I'm just explaining where the fence actually is, because there's an existing brick wall,
Right.
which is about 6 feet tall.
Yeah.
So depending on where you're standing on the Croton Aqueduct, because the grade changes, when you look up, your view is going to be a little different, you know? So the fence that's being added is only where it's basically going to be about 6 feet.
Wait,
Yeah, to match the height of the brick wall. So
so
the
you're
fence.
saying 6 plus 6 is 12?
No.
Oh,
Total
no.
6 feet
Total
of
6.
that. So in the area where the existing stone wall is, we are putting a fence, but it will match the height of the existing brick wall. So they're both 6 feet.
Then you're gonna put a wooden something on top of the brick.
Yeah, that's what I saw, the wooden something on top of the brick wall.
No, by code, it can't be higher than 6 feet.
So-
They're under the 600 feet.
Yeah, so it was just that section where there's an existing stone wall, we're putting brick to match
Right.
the other, but we're not exceeding that height. So the existing stone wall is about this high.
Right.
So we're putting brick there, and then we're adding a fence on top of that to match the height
Match the brick.
of the other brick, the rest of the brick wall.
6 feet
So 6
max.
feet.
And you're saying that's 6 feet max? Oh,
Yeah.
I saw another picture that had something
Yeah.
wooden on top of the brick, too.
Yeah,
Maybe that
so
would-
so that was only just a small, that one view you saw that we had a rendering of. That was on the section where there's an existing stone wall that we're replacing with a small section of brick, and then the fence to match, because we don't want to touch the rest of the brick wall
So in
over
other words-
here to restore,
okay.
keep historic value.
There's nothing going on top of the existing longer brick
No,
wall?
no, absolutely not.
Oh, I saw a picture that had something different. Okay, and then when you look from the aqueduct, even though I realize you can be standing in different sections?
Yeah, you'll see it.
Yeah. How much of your bottom, for instance, that's the back of a house, right?
Yes.
How much of that height would be
Depending
visible
where you're
above the
standing, it
fence?
may be, half, maybe a little bit more, or a little bit less, depending on where you're standing. Because you're standing back and you're looking at a wall that's up, so you're
And then
looking at
you're
an
looking-
angle too, so.
So it would be at least half, you're saying?
It may be less in some locations, depending on where you're standing on the aqueduct, maybe a little bit more in some, but roughly that.
And then when I looked at it,
Because it is set back too.
50 feet.
It's set
50
back,
feet.
right.
Yeah.
Right. And then when I looked at it, at your rendering, it seemed like the chimneys were quite high, but maybe that's because...
They've been modified.
Oh, they have?
They
Okay.
were
They
higher.
came down?
Yes.
Oh, good, okay.
Yeah, so they've all been brought down.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Gigi Hennis, Jaffrey Park.
I'm sorry, say your name again, please.
Gigi Hennis, Jaffrey Park. I just wondered who the units are going to appeal to. Is it going to be retirees, families? Because that's, again, the question of how many people. And my second question is just at what price point do we think we're at?
I don't believe that's been determined yet, the price point on this, Joe.
What do you think, though?
Probably not. So,
You guys are builders, $1 million?
could not tell you at this point, really.
How many bedrooms in each unit?
Yeah. Because nobody's talked about size.
Half and half, some first floor.
Wait, take the microphone.
Joe, come up, please.
We're gonna try to
State your name.
do, Joseph DiNardo. We're gonna try to do half and half, some first floor masters and then 3 bedrooms on the top floor. So, could comply to empty nesters,
So 4 bedrooms.
So they're all going to be 4 bedrooms?
no, 3 bedrooms.
Oh, so
Some
the
of them
master...
with masters on the first floor with 2 bedrooms upstairs.
Oh, okay.
And the rest would be 3 bedrooms.
Upstairs.
So no more than 3
Okay.
bedrooms in all units.
Okay, okay. And in the affordable units, they're also the same configuration?
Some are 1 bedrooms, some are 2
Two
bedrooms,
bedrooms.
some are 3 bedrooms.
Okay.
I gotta do 2, 2, and 2.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Christine Plazas for Richmond Hill. My biggest concern, I believe, is about the walkers and especially the children. We talked about all the lights and timing. We didn't even mention Dow's Lane. I walk my dog. I see children walking to Dow's Lane School from Richmond Hill, from Harriman Road, and I don't think anyone can get across that road in 4 seconds. So I'm worried about that. And I'm also worried about the parking, especially in that upper lot across from the River City Grill. I frequent that many times of different times of the day, and parking is always difficult. And also, I worry about the merchants on that stretch of Broadway, the cleaner, the deli, and even the Broadway Bar and Grill. So I worry about where those people are going to park.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name's Dale Russell, 12 Willow Street. I am a registered landscape architect here in the state of New York, but I live in Scarborough Park, the neighborhood right through the tunnel. A couple things that I liked hearing tonight and that I would like to see. Caesar had mentioned the elevation, the southern elevation of the units directly up the hill, the 2 units. My concern that there are walkouts that you're going to be looking at 3 stories, so you'd be looking at basement, 1, 2, and then the attic roof. That seems rather tall. I would like to see what that southern elevation looks like. I'd also want to know if there are any Photoshop photo montages of what that elevation might look like by placing those units into existing photographs. I think you know what I mean. Photo renderings.
Do you have them on the presentation?
We have some, but we'll get that information so you can see that too. We have some photographs of that area which we can
But you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, I
The-
do.
The
I do.
proposed
Exactly.
rendering.
You wanna
They
look at-
exist.
Right.
Yeah.
The other thing I liked was the discussion of sidewalks and how they might connect to Station Road Tunnel, and the inclusion of that in this proposal. I think that's very important from a pedestrian point of view and just from a neighborhood point of view. Does the architecture of the Stern House change at all?
I don't think there's any substantial changes. You want to comment on that?
The exterior is going to remain pretty much the same. It's just the interior that's going to be refit.
Okay. Because that is, that is the gateway to essentially, downtown Irvington. So that's a concern. Overall, I have a concern about density and the number of people and the number of units, as has been mentioned here a couple times. Mostly the number of people. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we go back to Mr. Campbell, anybody else who hasn't spoken yet would like to? Yes, ma'am. Yes. Thanks.
Susan Robinson, representing the Irvington Housing Committee. I have been asked to read a letter. Dear Chairman Natarelli and members of the Planning Board, as members of the Irvington Housing Committee, we would like to express our support for Donardo Capital's plan as outlined in its January 16, 2016 application to the Village Planning Board to include 6 units of fair and affordable housing in its proposed residential project at 30-40 South Broadway, the former Foundation for Economic Education property. We also support its intention to adaptively reuse the historic McCone Stern House for that purpose. As is the case with many Westchester municipalities, Irvington has a pressing need for housing which is affordable and available to moderate income individuals and families. Irvington residents have also demonstrated their desire to preserve the historic character of the village, and preserving the McCone Stern House, in addition to increasing the supply of fair and affordable housing units as proposed by Donardo Capital, is a substantial step in furthering both of these goals. The Irvington Housing Committee is fully aware of the provisions of the county housing settlement, and we are also aware that Irvington is one of the only 3 communities in the county yet to have an approved affordable housing project that counts towards the county's requirements under the settlement. We assure you that it is not lack for trying. We have worked continuously over the past 7 years to do our part in helping the county comply with the terms of the settlement, and we believe this project represents an important opportunity to demonstrate our community's true commitment to affordable housing. Thank you. The Irvington Housing Committee. Peter Bernstein, Deborah Flock, Rosemary Noonan, Housing Action Council, Susan Robinson, Karen Schatzel, Mel Tansman. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to? Ms. Wilson?
I'm Joe Wilson, Irvington resident and EC representative. Several questions. One, regarding this diagram, it looks like there are 4 chimneys on the overall structure, but I don't see the chimney, the back chimneys from the front. Because it looks like the chimneys there should be 4 chimneys seen above the rooftop. So I just would like for somebody to clarify with me if I'm misunderstanding the visual representation there.
Well, from the front elevation, if you're looking from the ground up, you would never see the tops of those chimneys from the rear and vice versa.
Right, if you're standing at the front of the house, however,
Or if you're standing in the rear,
some of these are going to be seen from a long view.
you have to be back quite a view, but
Well, whether it's from the Aqueduct Trail or from, other parts of the village or even via the road. I'm just not that familiar with how that might add to the visual impact. So that's just a question I have.
Yeah, I mean, from purely an elevational view, we could show these chimneys peeking up there, but I think the point is that you're never standing and looking at that view. You're standing on the ground. And the angle you'd be looking at, whether it's from the aqueduct or anywhere else on this property, you're not going to see the back chimneys or from the back see the front chimneys. It's just your angle would never allow you to see that. But for accuracy's sake, if you want those added, we could add those.
Well, because that's visually represented as a straight-on view, correct?
Well, it is an elevational view, but it's not a view that a person would be unless you're back quite a distance looking at this too. You'd never quite see that. The angle, you'd never see that other chimney, but we can correct that on the drawing. If that's
Okay.
And then I think you need to bring those Photoshop
Yes.
drawings that you have
We will do
from
that.
different views.
And then also, in regards to the ECB, we are still, and we've said this before, we are concerned about the loss of a relatively large community of mature trees and the loss of habitat and ecosystem services that's going to represent. And along that line, when stormwater is talked about and the calculation is said that, there's the stormwater calculations for the post-construction stormwater will be equal to or less than what it currently is. I'm wondering, were the trees' stormwater processing capability factored into that calculation?
Well, you'd look at cover types. So when you're doing the calculations, if it's a tree-covered area versus a lawn-covered area, yeah, they are differentiated when you're doing your calculations, so they are taken into account.
And does that take into effect the different species and the different sizes of the trees? Because they
I don't believe
process
so.
differently.
I don't believe so, that it doesn't. I don't think it's a...
Just cover.
Yeah, it's cover type, but from my experience, it's somewhat conservative too in that regard, so.
Okay. And then... No, okay, I guess that covers the points. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Again, a quick one. One of the gentlemen mentioned fireplaces. I would assume they're all gas-fired?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Anyone else? No? All right, well,
Yeah, just to address the Friends of the Aqueduct, this was not arrived at lightly. There was quite a few presentations that didn't have these architectural features, and the board did not want to see the backs of a barracks. This developed to make it more pleasant looking when you looked up at it from the aqueduct, and also from the apartments to the north and from Station Road. So the visual impact of making it a little more features was
I think it's
intentionally added.
It's lovely. I was just wondering
And the
about
applicant,
volumes.
and the applicant was happy to do it,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yes. You would say you put a gun to me.
No other comments? Okay, Mr. Gruber, did you want to say something?
No, I know, but unless you were...
No, I was just going to say, I think there are some questions that were raised this evening. I think you need to address those and come back with answers for the public and for us at the next meeting, and still continue to work.
Your consultant.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's a good question. I mean, the sidewalk is a new element that we had not considered before, and I'd just like to get a feel from the other members of the board how they feel about the sidewalk.
Well, number one, I don't know if there's room between the curb and the street.
Well, there are issues on both sides of Station. I mean, you've got retaining walls and park on one side, and plus I think there's an electrical transmission.
There's a manhole sitting there too.
Right, and then on the other side, you've got the stream and a narrow band and some trees that would have to come out, I think. And again,
It's a great idea, and it should be looked into. And if it can't be done, it can't be done.
all right,
We'd be willing to.
all right, so take a look at
We're
that.
aware of the comments that we're going to.
Okay. And I think you ought to look on both sides and do an evaluation of what the obstacles and what the potentials are on both sides of the street.
I think it's best on the north side, not the south side.
I just have one question.
The only issue with that is whether that's
counted in coverage. If it's counted in coverage, then, you know, if it's on village property, then I
Make
think
it
it's
when it's on
fine.
village
Yeah.
property, it doesn't count as coverage, right?
Oh, I think it's
Not for your site, anyway.
But you guys have plenty of coverage.
Mr. Chairman, I have one question.
Yes.
Again, Anthony Russo, AKRF, Village Traffic Consultant. Will you be discharging stormwater into any DOT-owned facilities as part of this project?
No.
No? Okay, I just wanted to confirm that.
Yeah, just one other thing, I don't know if the mics, so I'll talk loud. It would be helpful, on previous, this is to JMC and to David, on previous submissions, resubmissions, you indicate like what's new over the last time. We haven't gotten that letter the last 2 times, and I find it really is helpful. So you don't have to do, not like every adjustment you make to stormwater. I don't mean every single response to Hans' memos, but like the substantive changes, like tonight, it wasn't until you mentioned in passing that you lowered the chimneys. And if you look at these plans a lot, it's kind of hard for those of us who keep looking at it month to month. So if you could just note what's changed over the previous plan, I think
We've
it'd be
taken
helpful for all the
careful
board.
notes tonight, so we'll address some of the public comments.
Yeah, I think it'd be helpful for the board and certainly helpful for staff.
Okay, with that, then I think we're going into an executive session, sort of, I think, on another matter,
On advice of counsel.
on advice of counsel. So unless there are any other comments, I'll have a motion to adjourn. Second?
Second.
The meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.